There's obviously something happening right now, and we're not being told the whole truth. There are people who say they know answers about what the COVID spread is, or what's behind it right now. There are people who tell you they can protect you, that if you just listen to them, everything will be much, much better. But what exactly could the justification be if you look at the data? I mean, what is the rationalization of what's happening here? They don't really have any good answers for you. You look at places like Florida and Texas, that right now CNN has Texas, Arizona, Florida push back against COVID mitigation measures. They want, particularly Florida, but all these states to cave in right now. Here is what's going on. The Broward County of Florida school superintendent is saying they're just going to go against the state mandate here.
You know, my core value is students first. No amount of personal financial loss will cause me to go against this value. No amount of money can compare to a person's life or the impact that this virus may have on a person or their family.
Clay, this is where we are now. They're just going to do what they want to do. She's saying that all the governor's telling people is parents have choice. Schools can't make kids masked up if their parents don't want them to. And some school districts are saying, no, governor. Well, that's not how our system works, Clay.
Yeah, look, I want to give some data, right? One of the things that we try to do on this show is, and this is a big story, and I think there's a lot of discussion around it right now, and I understand why people sometimes feel overwhelmed because the way that the daily media cycle goes, Buck, it's like you're drinking from a fire hose, right? If you're just right now tuning into us and you're like, hey, what's going on? What I believe we can do is be as honest as possible with our audience with real data and try to interpret that for you. So let me give you a couple of data points here. We've got an article up at Outkick right now. I'd encourage you to check out Outkick.com, the site I run. Past year, according to the CDC, there have been 40,396 kids 11 and under die. Okay? That is an awful story. That is a tragedy for each of those parents. I've got 3 kids. Everybody knows once you become a parent, you have 2 primary fears. 1, that something could happen to your kid. And 2, that you might not be there to raise them to adulthood. That's every single parent, no matter your race, no matter your gender, everything. So these are all tragedies, right? 40,396 kids 11 and under have died since the start of 2020. Fewer than 200 of those deaths are from COVID. That means 99.5%, roughly, of all deaths that have occurred in children 11 and under are from something other than COVID. Now, this is a big deal to me because I think it ties in with the fear, because the fear really is about kids and masking and everything else. So I walked my kids, Buck, to school this morning, my 2 youngest, my 1st grader and my 5th grader. They've now implemented a mask mandate in the area where I live, but they're not really enforcing it. Everybody was walking in. I would say the vast majority of parents, their kids did not have masks on. These are not parents, by the way, that are making irrational decisions because they want to risk their children's lives. I think this is important about parent choice. I care more about my kids' health and safety than I do anything going on in my life. And I look at all the data and know that wearing a mask is not making them safer. And I think that's what the vast majority of parents out there are doing. And Buck, unfortunately, you know how we're going to be covered because we already saw it. CNN is doing hit pieces based on the event that I went to. We played you yesterday the clip of my speaking at the school board meeting, and CNN today, this morning, Allie, our producer, texts us and says, hey, CNN has got video where they're trying to make everybody, 1,000 or more parents who showed up, like they're Neanderthals who don't care about science.
Yeah, they're your masked insurrectionists, Clay. That's actually
right.
what this
is.
What that's what's actually happening right now. That's the circumstance. That's the situation. Play clip 1.
They ended up voting in favor of a temporary mask mandate that would only apply to the elementary school students there. And what you saw after this meeting in the parking lot was the anger and frankly, the vitriol boiling over with supporters, or I should say opponents of masks, lashing out at the supporters of masks and even heckling people walking out of that meeting wearing masks. We know who you are. We will find you. We also heard someone in the background saying, I am a parent. So these are parents heckling other parents, Erica.
Oh.
What an example they're setting. It is disturbing, to put it mildly.
Play the world's smallest violin and pass around the soy milk, Clay. You were there. Here CNN is trying to make it seem like anyone who shows up at a meeting like this to voice their opinion about what Ireland, Tucker did on his show last night on Fox, the study that the Irish, they've looked at the data, they've said it's basically child abuse, okay?
That's right.
You're making kids uncomfortable, causing anxiety. It does not keep them safer. Obviously, people should be upset about that. But the hysterics that think, that little Timmy or little Susie is going to die if they don't have some stupid piece of cloth over their face all day, they're the barbarians who are threatening people now. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, and this is emblematic of how unfair reporting can be, right? We talked about the mostly peaceful protests that CNN covered for months, the BLM riots that were taking place all over the country. And what did they say? Even the people who were burning down police buildings, who were trying to burn down courthouses, they were saying, oh, that's a small minority of the protesters. A couple of people are really fired up as these people who have gotten a mask mandate put in place walk outside of the building and they tell them, hey, we think there should be consequences for what has happened here. And this, to me, is indicative of what happens when your representatives, and I had a buddy call me, and I'm curious what you think about this, Buck. I had a buddy call me, and he said, you know what? I've never paid attention to who's on the school board before. I mean, that's what he said, candidly. He's got 4 kids, and he said, I've never cared. I pay attention to who I vote for governor. I pay attention to who I vote for Senate, all of those things. He said, I've never thought about the school board, but what this showed me is the school board, the lowest level of the democratic process, often can have the most impact. And I bet most of you out there listening to us right now, but put myself in this category. I didn't know who my school board representative was. I never really thought about it when I went in to vote. I'm going to care now because they are not reflecting in our neighborhood and in our county. They aren't reflecting the democratic values of the people. And so when you do that, you create anger and you create discord and distrust. And that's what we saw in the wake of that meeting.
It's going to get worse, everybody, unfortunately, across the country. It's going to get worse because you have more of the dominoes falling. You have the governor of New York, incoming governor of New York, Hochul, saying going to be a universal statewide mask mandate in all schools in New York. Does anybody think that California's, not going to make sure that they
Kentucky just did it, Buck. Kentucky just made a universal mask mandate for everybody in the schools. I mean, so Kentucky.
This is, and it's even hard to keep up because these things are changing day in and day out in all these states. But you're looking at this, and what they really want is Florida, because Florida is the beacon of freedom, has been the beacon all along of they did not lock down. They did not go to that place that they were told they had to, or else it was going to be an experiment in death and all this other stuff that they said. Now what they're desperate to make sure happens is that Florida can't be the control group, because if you have schools in Florida without masks and all these other states with mandatory masks for children,
that's right,
you will be able to do a very clean comparison of whether or not this stuff matters. And I'm telling you, I would bet a large sum of money on, if we can get to this place where we see what the control group of Florida says, we'll know that this is all stupid and the people that are pushing this are hysterical loons. They want to avoid that at all costs. So all they need is Broward County, a few others to have. If you have a patchwork system, it's going to be, the data is muddled. We can't really see. Some schools had it. Some schools didn't. We need to have some places that hold the line against this madness. And I'm worried the pressure right now is gaining so much. And part of it, Clay, is how are we having, when we have, over 190 million people in the U.S. have gotten at least one dose of this vaccine. 163.9 million people have been fully vaccinated. And we're being told that there are some states that have, 50%, 60% vaccination rates that are, oh my gosh, the Delta variant is it's only possible for this to be as bad as it is right now if there are some things that they're not telling us yet, but we're going to find out soon. Like this vaccine or the vaccines wear off even faster than was anticipated, which when you hear Dr. Anthony Fauci saying, he said it today, Clay, everyone's going to need a booster.
And I'll tell you this, these are quotes from Axios that I saw this morning. Number one story, Biden's COVID fear, fading vaccines. And it says here, surprising new research, not surprising to people who've been paying attention to this show, shows the effectiveness of COVID vaccines, I'm reading directly from Axios, fading faster than expected, raising fears inside the Biden administration about the health and messaging consequences for Americans. I'm reading directly from Axios. And this is a senior Biden official that is not named, but the quote here is, I think everybody believes this wanes over time. The question is, to what extent? Nobody wants to be behind the 8 ball here. We want to catch it before there's an issue, and that's why there is very intense scrutiny. They're looking at Israel, Buck. They are looking at England. Israel is one of the most vaccinated countries in the world, and the overall hospitalization rates are skyrocketing. And we talked to Alex Berenson last week. A lot of people criticize Alex Berenson. They try to cancel him. But the data doesn't lie, right? And ultimately, the data is telling us there are major issues with these vaccines and how long they last.